Okay, so I set out to live in a tiling window manager and use only terminal-based applications where possible for 30 days. I'm on day 27 of that 30-day challenge, and you know what I've decided 27 days into this 30-day challenge? I want to switch terminal emulators. So, I have decided to switch from my go-to terminal. It has been for some time now. Termite. I love the Termite terminal, but I've had some viewers suggest me to use some other alternative terminal emulators. And, you know, at some point, I've probably used every terminal emulator out there. And the one that I've had a couple of people request, I've had people email me about, had people send me links to videos demonstrating how this particular terminal emulator works. URXVT. URXVT is a very old terminal emulator. It's been around forever. And I actually have used URXVT in the past. I've actually used it quite a bit in the past. And it was a terminal emulator that I grew tired of because out of the box, it is pretty bad. It doesn't support a lot of characters, a lot of Unicode characters, even though the actual name of this particular terminal is RxVT Unicode. That's what URXVT stands for. The actual program name, RxVT-Unicode. But I have found that, you know, a lot of fonts, a lot of glyph fonts in particular, just don't render properly in URXVT. Another thing I didn't like is natively, out of the box, doesn't support copy paste, doesn't support mouse scrolling, especially in Vim, which I love doing a mouse wheel scroll in Vim, but for some reason, every time I load up Vim and URXVT in the past, I couldn't get the mouse wheel scrolling to work. I have had problems getting Powerline in Vim to look correctly in URXVT. Sometimes you get these strange characters. Again, it's because of some of the fonts, some of the glyphs not loading properly. Other things that I didn't care about URXVT. I didn't like the fact that you pretty much had to add extensions, all these Perl extensions, to add all this extra functionality, which really should be default functionality to it. I also didn't like the fact that I had to use the xresources file or the xdefaults file, depending on which one you want to use. I usually use the xresources file to configure this thing. And that is why I moved away from URXVT in the past. It's also the reason I moved away from Xterm. Xterm is another old school terminal emulator. It works, it functions, so does URXVT. I have no problems using them. But Termite, out of the box, just works. The Termite config file also is very simple, very easy to use. So, what did it take to make me decide earlier today to go ahead and make the switch? I'm going to switch from Termite and I'm going to go back to URXVT. I haven't used URXVT in a couple of years, but you know what? Some of you guys gave me suggestions. Some of you pointed me to certain video tutorials on URXVT. And you know what? You kind of changed my mind on this thing. The first thing I want to discuss about URXVT is the fact that it comes with its own daemon, URXVTD. That is the daemon for URXVT. Looking at their man page here on the web. Basically, you run the URXVT daemon. You run it from your X startup script. You can put it in your Xinit or whatever loads up. If you're running some very minimal window manager, you guys know I run Qtile right now, and by default, Qtile, I have a auto start script that runs when Qtile launches, and I have Compton, the compositor, loading on start. I have Nitrogen, which sets my wallpaper on start, and I also have it set to go ahead and launch the URXVTD, the daemon. So, Basically, why would you want to run this URXVT daemon? Because it speeds up the creation of terminals. Not that URXVT is a bloated program. You know, it's a very minimal, very snappy program anyway, but having that daemon constantly running in the background allows for faster creation times for terminal windows, and it allows for saved memory, so less RAM usage. Now, without the daemon, on most modern hardware with the kind of RAM we're running these days, you can run a million terminals without having a daemon running, and you're probably good. But again, I'm kind of a speed freak. I kind of like this. I like having this daemon constantly running in the background. I create all the terminals I want, and I save a little bit of RAM on each one. Disadvantages of running this daemon is basically all these terminals are connected to this daemon. And if the daemon fails, you know, you lose all your terminals. If you X-kill a certain terminal, you run the risk of all of them being killed. If one window crashes, you run the risk of all of them crashing. That is the downside. Okay, so one of the killer features of URXVT is the extensions, how you can give it some extended functionality through Perl extensions. Reading some of the Arch Wiki here, some of the Perl extensions available for us are clickable URLs, yankable URLs, simple tabbing, full screen, changing font size on the fly, being able to make the font size bigger or smaller with key bindings. That's just some of what we can do here with URXVT if we install the extensions. So let me show you how to get the extensions installed. Let me show you my desktop here. I'm going to open up a terminal. Sudo pacman -S URXVT-Perls. This is how you would install this in Arch. Let me make this bigger so you can see it. You need this program, sudo pacman -S URXVT-Perls. I think another program I ended up installing to get the resize fonts that you just guys saw me make the fonts bigger. I think I needed to pull this down from the AUR URXVT-resize fonts -get, I believe is the name of the AUR package I also installed. I could be wrong on that. Do a Google search or a DuckDuckGo search, whichever one you like. Anyway, you definitely need the URXVT-Perls package. Once you have that installed, those Perl extensions are not going to work. You still have to go to your xresources file or your xdefaults file, whichever one you use. I use xresources. Let me open up my xresources file in Vim. And in your xresources file, you need to add the extensions in that. You see I have this line here, URXVT Perl, extensions common, and then a list of extensions. Default, matcher, resize font, URL select, keyboard select, and clipboard. Those are the extensions I chose to add to my xresources file. The one I've already showed you, resize font, it's right here, URXVT, resize font, smaller, Control J. Resize font, bigger, Control K. So Control J, smaller, Control K. Bigger. J and K, of course, the Vim keys. You guys could set this to any key binding you wish. You could do Control down for, you know, making the font smaller, Control up, arrow key, to make the font bigger, or again, any key binding you wish. So that is the resize font extension. Some other extensions I added, URL select. Let me demonstrate this one to you. I can't demonstrate it though in my xresources file because there are no URLs in this file. So let me close that. I'm going to open up my Qtile config file. Let me open that up in Vim. I already have that hotkeyed here. And let me make the font bigger. So Control K again to make my font bigger. All right. And URL select, I have that set to Alt U on the keyboard. Alt U takes me to the last link on the page. Let me turn on screen key so you guys can see that. So Alt U takes me to the last link. Now, to navigate through the links on the page, I can use up, down, arrow keys, up, down, or I can use JK, the Vim keys for up and down. Once I find the link I want to open up, I just hit enter. Now, it should open up in my browser. I specified a browser for it to open in my X resources file. I told it to open these links in the links web browser, which it did. Let me make the links web browser bigger. Control K. Pretty cool, huh? So I could also Alt U to get to the last link inside the links web browser, which it did, which the link is to my YouTube page. If I wanted to, I could yank that link. Remember, we have yankable URLs. Y to yank. I just yank that, which means if I open up another terminal, I can middle click on the mouse wheel here and paste that link because I'd already yanked it. We also, in our X resources file, if you remember, we set up copy and paste. So in the links web browser here, let me highlight that word. I had copy and paste set to Alt C for copy. Back to this terminal window here, Alt V, paste, paste, paste. You highlight all of that. Alt C, Alt V, and so forth and so on. Let me close all that out. Now, I had mentioned in the past I'd had some problems getting certain fonts, especially glyph fonts, working correctly in URXVT. Sometimes they just didn't render properly. Sometimes all you got was like a open rectangle instead of the actual font that you were after, especially in things like Powerline and Vim. But all that seems to work here. Let me open up Vim and my X resources file. You see the Powerline looks good. Everything renders right, and part of the reason is you got to pick good fonts. And I found this nerd font collection, nerd fonts. Search for that. You guys that are on Arch-based distros, search for nerd fonts, and they have, you know, Ubuntu Mono, Inconsolata, another monospace font for the terminal, Deja Vu Sans, Droid Sans, Mono, Fura Mono, Roboto Mono, etc., etc. Anyway, a ton of fonts. I didn't add them all, but I added a lot of them here into my X resources file because you can specify multiple fonts in the X resources. It's always going to look for the first one. My terminal font of choice is Ubuntu Mono. In this case, Ubuntu Mono Nerd font. Now, if for some reason, you know, there's some kind of glyph or font, some kind of character that URXVT is trying to load, and it doesn't exist in Ubuntu Mono Nerd font, it will then go to the next font in the list and see if it exists in that font, then the next, then the next. So, should have a lot covered by specifying, in this case, about 7 or 8 fonts. And I haven't really found any program where the font rendering wasn't really good. Powerline is usually one that people struggle with. Powerline works, so Vim is squared away. Another one that sometimes things can be iffy in is Ranger. The Ranger file manager, especially with the icons. You see the icons are working just fine. Another thing about URXVT that is a big plus from Termite. Termite did a lot of things well, but one thing Termite did not do, let me go to my backgrounds folder here where I keep all my wallpapers. The image preview works perfectly in URXVT. I can scroll through all my wallpapers here and they load up. I mean, just perfectly. Termite would not render any image preview in Ranger. It just wouldn't do it. Now, I just kind of lived with it because Termite did so many other things really well. But you know what? I kind of like this. I kind of like being able to see the images in a folder, especially like a background or a wallpaper folder that's got a million items or photos. And for you photographers, I'm not a photographer, but if you got a folder with a ton of images, having a preview is a pretty nice thing to have. It's a pretty big deal. Ooh, I did get some strange stuff there. You guys see how that glitched? That glitched when I actually switched screens. I've got 3 monitors. When I move the mouse to the 3rd monitor, got a little strange stuff going on. So, but again, this is my first day in it. I don't expect this to work 100% all the time, the image previews, because I've never got these image previews in Ranger to work 100% all the time in any terminal. I don't care what it is. GNOME terminal, Dolphin, XFCE's terminal, URXVT, Xterm, Simple Term, and I've tried them all. Yeah, you see, every time I switch back to OBS, I'm recording OBS over here. You know, whatever image preview it's on, it kind of craps out on me. Not a big deal though. I can live with it. So URXVT seems to be working with all the programs that I've been living in the past month. All the programs that I was using Termite with, URXVT works the same. So I mean, I've got, you know, a lot of the same stuff. Here's Googler. This is, what was this? Newsboat, the RSS feed reader. Matter of fact, this would be a good one just to test out because this one's going to have links. Alt-U, again, in URXVT, should get me to the link. I hit enter. It should open up in the links web browser. Perfect. And I actually had not tested this out, but yeah, it just works. We wait a minute for this web page to load. Apparently it must be a pretty big web page. Yeah, it's DistroWatch's page announcing the release of PenGuy OS, whatever. But anyway, pretty much all my programs work. Open up HTOP, everything looks right. You know, we can open up, this is CMUS, the music player. I don't have any music to play. One program, actually the only program I found that just does not render correctly, and it's one that I'm not invested in any way, so it's not a big deal at all. You guys remember I showed you Whopper, W-O-P-R, Whopper, which was a presentation kind of program. Basically, it's like LibreOffice, Impress, or Word, PowerPoint. That's up in the terminal. You create presentation kind of documents in the terminal using markup language, XML. You can see all these open rectangles. These are characters that did not render properly. URXVT does not know what to do with that particular font, so you get these strange characters. So Whopper, for whatever reason, not working correctly. I haven't even really played around in Whopper that much, and it's kind of a program that honestly I've probably never used as far as on a serious level. So that is not a big deal. I would kind of like to investigate that though, see if I could get it fixed, because whatever characters are not loading properly in Whopper, they may also not load properly in other programs down the road that I install that may be more of a big deal to me. So it's something I need to look into. So day 27 of 30, switching my terminals right here at the end. And you know what? I'm okay with it. I really like Termite. Termite did a lot of things well. Termite, for one thing, just because of the simple configuration and the way it handles everything out of the box. URXVT does a lot of really nice stuff, but you know what? I had to install a couple of extra packages. I had to config that X-Resources file, and you know, it took, you know, a couple of hours of research, reading the Arch Wiki, and you know, to get to this point where Termite really just works as is out of the box. You really don't have to do any extensions to it or any. I don't even know if Termite has extensions to it. Termite just does everything well. But you know what? If you're willing to invest the time, URXVT might be the best terminal emulator out there. Again, if you're willing to put in some time and effort. Before I go, I want to give a special thanks to my patrons, all my Patreon supporters: AK Ron, Mr. Neely Pops, John, Brian, Carl, Greg, Carlos, Rob, Matt, Darkwin, Mark, Christian, Jake, Benjamin, Stephen, Marcus, Interceptor, Bob, Leor, Omar, and Silvio. You guys rock. You guys help make this show possible. Peace, guys.